Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts has declined to testify before a Congressional Ethics Committee. In an accompanying statement signed by all 9 justices, the court insisted that existing ethics rules surrounding financial disclosures are sufficient, and that requiring further disclosures may constitute a risk to their personal security. The court also maintained that justice appearances before Congress are, quote, exceedingly rare, as one might expect in light of separations of powers concerns and the importance of preserving judicial independence.
Roberts' refusal to testify comes just as new reporting from Politico reveals that just days after he was confirmed in 2017, Justice Neil Gorsuch quietly sold a $1.8 million property to a CEO whose law firm has since argued at least 22 cases before the Supreme Court. Gorsuch did disclose the property's sale on financial reporting forms, though he did not say who it was to. That box was left blank. According to Politico, the company in question, Greenberg Traurig, has represented clients in 12 cases where Gorsuch's opinion is recorded, and of those 12 cases, he sided with the clients 8 times, which of course means he did not side with them the other 4. I've read this story. I think there's much less to this one even than the Clarence Thomas one, which also didn't quite sway me very much. He was, Neil Gorsuch was one of the co-owners of this property. He had like a 20% stake in it. It was sold to this CEO who, by the way, doesn't seem to be any kind of partisan or conservative necessarily. His donations have gone to majority to Democrats. Gillibrand received some of his financial support. So there's no evidence of a personal friendship or even them knowing each other as there was in the Clarence Thomas case.
This is a really important point. Partisanship is used by elites to obscure corruption and convince people to root for the corrupt folks who are on their side. So the idea that a partner at a law firm would be making unofficial donations to a Supreme Court justice because they're trying to pursue their own political agenda, however they, vote because they what tax break they want, as opposed to pursuing their professional agenda as someone who's deeply invested in the financial fate of their company, I think is really missing the picture. Factually, this property had been on the market for 2 years, trying to be sold. 9 days after becoming a Supreme Court justice, it sold. And I would also point to the fact that knowing what the outcomes of these cases are isn't dispositive. Judges make all kinds of decisions. They can weight the scale in terms of decisions on motions, discovery, et cetera, that can affect the outcome of the case and the tenor in the courtroom that may or may not yield the desired result. So I think that's neither here nor there. But the point of the matter is the justices are now saying that the current level of disclosures required are sufficient. When we now see, at least in this case, that despite there being rules in place currently, Gorsuch didn't fulfill them. He didn't list the name of the person who had bought the property, even though he disclosed the sale of the property, generally speaking. So what are we saying here? That one, there's nothing to enforce Supreme Court justices following the ethics rules that have already been promulgated by Congress. 2, they are resisting any new rules that would force them into further compliance. Are we just accepting as a society that Supreme Court justices, 9 unelected people who have co-equal power with other branches of government, are supposed to provide meaningful checks and balances on our democracy, can be bought and influenced, and there's basically just nothing we can do about it, and we should feel good about it if we feel like the people who are buying them are on our respective political side?
There's no real evidence of actual influence being exerted so far in the examples made. It's a lot of, maybe you think, I'm not even sure this one is inappropriate. Maybe the people have argued. I mean, there are aspects of Clarence Thomas, including that he's married to a very well-known Republican activist, that I think should raise more questions, but there's no solution to this problem. I mean, if you want to subject...
There are solutions to the problem. The question is whether there's a political appetite for those solutions.
Okay, and there's no political appetite for that, then, I should say.
And I think that has something to do with whether or not there's public pressure for politicians to act on these sorts of things. And if media figures like ourselves, are constantly saying, well, there's nothing to be done here. There's no political appetite. There's a way that we can create that reality when we don't make it clear what the public's options actually are. And so I resist the idea that what is the case now will always be the case. Americans have decisions to make. They have decisions to make as to whether or not they want another matchup between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, two deeply unpopular candidates. They have decisions to make and make an act in a Democratic primary. Similarly, there are any number of anti-corruption bills that are on the table that never get talked about, or that Nancy Pelosi can slide off to the side because she would be personally implicated in terms of the insider trading bans. So over and over again, there are solutions to these kinds of problems. The question is whether or not the people in charge, elites, including elites in the media, are able to gloss over the extent to which we could be living in a different kind of world, because they benefit from these kind of play to pay arrangements. I did a radar on Clarence Thomas a couple of weeks back when this scandal broke, and I said, ultimately, it's not whatever he did with Harlan Crow that is the big red flag aha moment. It's the fact that in his legal decisions, he's been writing very clearly that he doesn't think anything other than me saying, Robbie, sign this contract, I'm giving you $1,000, and in turn you have to do whatever radars I tell you for the rest of the year. He says anything short of like an actual quid pro quo, I'm giving you money in exchange for this behavior, isn't corruption. And I think that really flies in the face of most people's experience. If someone holds the door for me, I feel vaguely obliged to them, and these people are taking millions of dollars worth of property off their hands. I mean, come on, Robbie. There is an unofficial influence campaign that is waged. We talked about this in the Twitter files. Yeah. People sending emails saying, hey, I think you should do this, is perceived as being inappropriate when the person doing the asking is as powerful as the FBI.
There was no asking here. There was no...
that we are aware of.
Well, that would be something. This is a property changing hands of which he's one of many owners to someone who's the head of the firm. Like, that guy's not even the one arguing the cases. I mean, look, if there was more evidence, then I would have something to evaluate. And if you're just going to say that,
they won't come before Congress.
Okay, if Congress,
they've been asked before Congress to be asked more details about this.
Congress wants to exercise more authority here and subject the Supreme Court to better disclosure procedures relating to their finances, their property owning, their networks. I don't object to that. That's fine.
Well, unfortunately, the Supreme Court is objecting to it. They're saying they will not become
all 9 of them.
Yeah, they will.
All 9 of them.
It's a problem for all 9 of them. I want to make this exceedingly clear. If you are corrupt, I don't care if you're a corrupt Democrat. I don't care if you're a corrupt Sotomayor. I don't care if you're a corrupt Ketanji Brown Jackson. I don't care if you're a corrupt Alito. The American people should not be standing for one of the most important branches of government to be corrupt in any way, shape, or form. This is a democracy issue. Point blank, period. This should not be a partisan issue. And the fact that all 9 Supreme Court justices are refusing to have any interrogation into these blatant ethics violations is a significant problem for all 9 justices.
All right, we'll have more Rising right after this.